Christians were once seen as a positive force in American society. That's changing. Today, many Americans label Christians as irrelevant and extreme.
Not so long ago, these people were seen as the extremists, rifle-brandishing ISIS militants, the Paris and Brussels attackers, the Boston Marathon bombers. Today, however, it's these people who increasingly wear that label. Do you believe that Jesus is the only way to heaven? You're an extremist. Have you ever prayed for someone you don't know? Extremist. Believe marriage is meant to be between one man and one woman? Extremist.
Last year's Supreme Court decision on legalizing same-sex marriage is having an impact beyond the shores of the United States. Now, change in America is bringing increased demands for social acceptance in China.
The Chinese LGBT community is changing society. According to China's health department, there are approximately 3 million male homosexuals in the country. That number is expected to rise rapidly. Most older Chinese people believe gay marriage is shameful to the family. However, millennials in Beijing express cheerful acceptance and positive support. They believe any type of true love should be honored. No one has the right to bring judgment upon others.
I don't understand why some Chinese people can't accept it. It is honored in the United States today. That's why people want to go to the U.S. to protect their true love.
Patriot love in all thy sons command.
First, gender-neutral bathrooms in some schools, and now gender-neutral graduation gowns. And again, there's a degree of controversy. CBS 2's Carolyn Gussoff reports at least 2 Long Island high schools are making changes.
Pomp and circumstance, caps and gowns, beloved graduation traditions. But now Schreiber High School in Port Washington breaking with one of its traditions. At graduation, gowns will be gender neutral. No more whites for girls, blue for boys.
I think they're doing blue with like a Schreiber logo on it.
A change that spurred heated debate.
Graduation's traditional for years. Like my parents went to the school, so my mom wore white, my dad wore blue.
I just think that the reason people are so unopen to change is because of tradition, but I think that traditions change and sometimes they need to.
You don't have to change it up. It hasn't really been an issue before. It doesn't have to be an issue now.
The trans kids in our schools need to feel included.
The district doing away with gender-based graduation gowns, citing requests and input from the student body. The superintendent says it goes well beyond the transgender issue. The time has come to no longer separate students by gender and to demonstrate a more inclusive practice at graduation. Some wonder why gowns were ever based on gender.
We should be celebrating them as graduates, not girl graduates and boy graduates.
Island Trees High School, too, doing away with gender-based gowns for boys and girls. The head of the LGBT network, David Kilmnick, says transgender students sought his guidance.
This is sort of like going back in the closet to have to put a gown on that doesn't match who they are.
While it may be too late this year to change the colors of graduation gowns, he predicts next year at this time, gender-neutral cap and gowns will be a nationwide trend.
Well, it's been a growing issue across the country, transgender equality, and today the focus was on the track. 13 seconds after the gun sounds, the fastest 3A girls in the state crossed the finish line of the 100-meter run. Haynes' Natafon Wengyat is among them, but Wengyat's story is different than any other runner at the state championships. She was born a male. Natafon and her coach declined to comment on this story, but outside the stadium, members of the Alaska Family Council gather to voice their opinion.
It is not fair and it is not right for our female athletes, and we have a responsibility to protect are girls that have worked really hard, that are working toward college scholarships.
Wengyat was the third seed in the 100-meter race coming into the weekend, just missing the cut. Hutchison senior Saskia Harrison.
I'm glad that this person's comfortable with who they are and they're able to be happy in who they are, but competitively I don't think it's completely 100% fair.
Well, I think that's an overgeneralization.
Alaska Schools Activities Association Executive Director Billy Strickland says the ASAA doesn't have a statewide policy for transgender athletes. Instead, they leave it up to schools to decide if an athlete can compete in a gender-specific sport.
We didn't want to necessarily create a situation where, we were going to bring in committees and those types of things, just because of the, just not practical here.
The Haynesboro School District is giving the green light. They're not alone. According to transathlete.com, 30 states allow for transgender athletes to compete with the gender they identify with.
39, 40, 41.
And putting together a permanent resolution here in Alaska could end up being more like a marathon than a sprint.
Now to the latest on the U.S. presidential race. Hillary Clinton now has enough delegates to win the Democratic nomination. If she officially becomes the nominee, it would represent a historic moment in U.S. politics, as she'll be the first woman in the 240-year history of the country to be named the presidential candidate of a major political party.
Hillary Clinton has secured 2,383 delegates, enough to give her the Democratic Party nomination, which would make her the first woman to top the presidential ticket of either political party. According to a Associated Press count released Monday night, the former U.S. Secretary of State has 1,812 pledged delegates and 571 superdelegates.
Trump supporter is being banned from wearing a signature Donald Trump hat to school after it caused safety concerns.
Logan Autry left school early Thursday because school leaders say something he's wearing is causing a safety concern. His red hat.
The vice principal came up to me and told me to take my hat off because it brings negative attention from other students, and I said no a few times, and then the principal told me, and I still said no and refused.
For 3 days straight, the third grader wore the hat to class, but each day more and more classmates began confronting him at recess.
I still want to keep my hat. It's not the hat that draws attention, it's just my personality that the other children do not like.
Logan recently moved to Fresno from the foothills. He loves politics and American history.
He knows more than I do. He knows more about this election than I know. It's kind of embarrassing, like, are you smarter than a third grader kind of thing. But yeah, he's just very adamant about his beliefs, about his rights, and he wants to be a politician. That's his goal.
He already has the shirt and tie down and practices speeches about Trump on the playground.
I've told them his policies on illegal immigration and our Second Amendment and our First Amendment and all of our amendments that need to be protected, which are not going to be an amendment at all if Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders gets elected.
Logan got his $20 now controversial hat when he skipped school to attend a Trump rally last week. He briefly met the presidential hopeful during his local stop and even got his hat autographed. From the mouth of a 9-year-old who won't back down from upper graders or district officials who say they're out to protect him and everyone else on school grounds. And with school almost out, Logan's family members are trying to offer him an alternative hat to wear, such as one with an American flag, but so far he has not been willing to swap out his red one.
Harvard University scientists are taking the first steps towards creating a completely synthetic human genome. The project would allow them to manufacture an entire set of human DNA. Although they could hope it would lead to more important medical breakthroughs, many oppose the idea. Skeptics are concerned scientists will try to manufacture designer human beings with the new technology.
Our hope is that this pig embryo will develop normally, but the pancreas will be made out almost exclusively out of human cells, so that then that pancreas could be compatible with the patient for transplantation.
The United States government is what I would call almost pro-death. I mean, we live in a very religious culture. We live in an area, in a country that essentially doesn't mind if we die because that's what their religion says. We need a kind of a culture that is wanting everyone to live indefinitely. We want a culture that insists that an indefinite lifespan is a universal right. So my Transhumanist Bill of Rights has essentially created this framework so that the American government can take up a legal framework and start putting science, resources, and technology towards all of us not dying, all of us living indefinitely.
I want to become a robot or become an artificial intelligence or become some type of super consciousness that might just be pure data someday.
And I will be advocating for life extension for you.
Transhumanists are a group of people that want to use science and technology to radically enhance the human being. Merging computers with brains generally goes by the term mind uploading. I would absolutely go for a better version of me through any type of technology. My main goal is to live in depth.
The body of a NASA research scientist employed at Wallops Flight Facility was found Sunday, June 5th, a day after her family reported her missing to Maryland State Police, or Sam Police said. Tiffany Moisen, 48, of Kemp's Nursery Road in Partizan, was found in a wooded area behind the Food Lion store in Birmingham Lane, police said. There are no apparent signs of foul play.
Getting ready for the big kickoff as organisers busily prepare for Euro 2016. But there was a reminder, should one have been needed, of the potential security threat. Ukrainian authorities say they detained a French national on the border with Poland in late May, and that he had been planning a series of attacks in France during the tournament. Although not linked to jihadist terrorism, French authorities were quick to emphasize the need for unity no matter the threat.
The fight against jihadist terrorists is an ideological fight. Unity and solidarity are the best response that we can give to those who seek to destroy us.
France is still reeling from the attacks in Paris last year by Islamic militants that killed 130 people. There are concerns the high-profile tournament could be targeted.
With less than 4 days until the Euro 2016 football tournament in France, the country is being buffeted by troubles. And while fresh terror warnings stream in, demonstrators are still on the streets protesting government labour reforms, and heavy floods are thought to have caused up to €1 billion worth of damage. However, President Hollande continues to insist everything is under control.
Passengers on a flight from Paris to Toronto have been forced to go through security checks again after it was discovered that some were let through without mandatory screening. The incident happened at Charles de Gaulle Airport in the French capital. When the Air Canada plane was already midair, it turned out that 17 passengers had failed to go through security screening, forcing them to be checked on landing. And our Paris correspondent Anna Baranova has the details.
There were 325 passengers, 12 crew members. All of these people were on board, and Air Canada came out with a statement that the passengers were in fact misdirected at Charles de Gaulle Airport by the staff from a connecting flight from Sri Lanka. They were meant to undergo additional security measurements, but that never happened. And this, of course, shocked many people, including the passengers themselves. People took to social media immediately to voice their disconcerts over the situation.
To be clear, I wasn't blaming Air Canada. The problem appears to have been with security at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris.
Paris security messed up, and some boarded flight without going through security. Now insane security protocol at Toronto Pearson Airport.
The sound of sirens, shattered glass, police barricade. The scene of yet another bombing in Istanbul. One that is becoming all too familiar for Turkish citizens. The explosion took place a few hundred meters from where we're standing. Police have closed off the area. This district is usually very crowded. It is near the historic Beyazıt Square as well as the Istanbul University. The first statement came from the Istanbul governor.
Bugün saat 8:40 sıralarında
a car bomb attack was used against vehicles carrying our rapid response police passing by on the road around 8:40 a.m. local time. The attorney's office, together with a team, is working on the investigation.
Ambulances were rushed to the scene as the injured were transferred to hospitals in the area. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan visited the wounded and emphasized Turkey would continue its fight against terror. Citizens in Turkey are concerned of the escalating violence with back-to-back terrorist attacks, as this is the fourth attack in Istanbul this year.
With the migrant crisis showing no sign of easing in the EU, a new trend is gaining ground, that of more Muslim refugees converting to Christianity. Some churches across Europe report mass baptisms being carried out. Trinity Church in Berlin says its parish has recently grown to 700, mostly due to Muslim converts. In Hamburg, 80 Muslim refugees from Iran and Afghanistan were baptized last week. In Austria, just in the first 3 months of this year, there have been 300 applications for adult christenings, and the majority of them are refugees. And an Anglican church in the UK says its weekly service attracts over 100 people, almost all of them are migrants.
I have been spat on, told that I have betrayed Islam, but through what I've learned, I can forgive them.
I'm easily spotted as a Christian in a refugee center. I see myself as a missionary and telling people about Jesus. Since I became a Christian, I fear no one.
However, opponents of Europe's open-door policy were quick to slam the moves. A member of the right-wing Alternative for Germany party, Frank Hansel, says some migrants could simply take advantage of the asylum system by claiming Christianity.
There are some refugees that have understood that the way Islam is handled as state ideology is part of the political problem of the countries they fled. And so if they then want to convert to Christianity, this is very welcomed, of course. But there might also be some refugees who learned that conversion to Christianity helps to receive the status of asylum. Then, of course, it may be a different situation. And I think, all in all, there should be a portion of skepticism towards this phenomenon.
Russia today criticized the U.S.-led military alliance NATO for its latest war games in Russia's neighbor, Poland. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called NATO's expansion of military infrastructure to Russia's border worrisome. NATO is holding separate large-scale military exercises in different places around the world. Thousands of military personnel, along with U.S. and NATO vessels, are taking part in a maritime exercise in the Baltic Sea. The Baltic operations mark the first time U.S. Marines have practiced land exercises in Finland, a non-NATO country that also borders Russia. NATO is also conducting a 2-week military exercise in Russia's neighbor Poland with more than 3,000 military personnel. It is the largest military drill that NATO has ever held with Warsaw.
The expansion of NATO's military infrastructure to our borders and its engagement in military activities with other countries of the bloc has aroused our discontent. Russia has the sovereign right and power to secure its safety by all reasonable methods, considering the possible risks.
Vladimir Putin's new Stary Oskal submarine, which is laden with missiles and torpedoes, ventured into the North Sea where it was intercepted by the anti-submarine Type 23 frigate HMS Kent. The Sun reports the super sub will move through the Dover Straits at 10 a.m., under the watchful eye of the Royal Navy. It is believed the submarine has been tracked by the HMS Kent since Sunday after it left its home port in Severomorsk, in Murmansk Oblast, Russia, and traveled down Britain's eastern coast. It is thought the submarine, which first set sail last year and is powered with a diesel-electric engine, is heading for the Black Sea to join the rest of Russia's fleet.
The Pentagon says it was the second unsafe intercept by a Chinese military aircraft of a U.S. plane in less than a month. This time on Tuesday over the East China Sea, a Chinese fighter jet approaching at a high rate of speed, coming within 100 feet of a U.S. Air Force RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft. The U.S. plane on a routine mission in international airspace, according to the Pentagon, when the Chinese aircraft approached at a very high rate of speed. The U.S. saying that was not a safe mission. Now, it was earlier in May when there was another unsafe intercept, according to the Pentagon, in the South China Sea, when 2 Chinese aircraft again approached a U.S. aircraft in what the U.S. says was international airspace, coming within 50 feet of the U.S. plane. But this latest incident came on a day when Secretary of State John Kerry and the U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew were in Beijing conducting talks there, and it comes as Defense Secretary Ash Carter left the region just a few days ago after a press conference in Singapore when he talked about the need to maintain stability in the area of the Pacific where both the Chinese and the U.S. are operating.
China reportedly deployed the HQ-9 air defense system on Woody Island, part of the Paracel Island chain in the South China Sea. The HQ-9 has a range of 125 miles. Satellite images show the beach on Woody Island was empty on February 3rd, but missiles were visible on the beach by February 14th.
参中。
全车注意，穿甲弹正前方敌坦克800短兵歼灭。
Well, tonight, 6 large wildfires are burning in California, one that is threatening Calabasas, an upscale suburb of Los Angeles. Hundreds of acres have burned. At least 5,000 people have been forced from their homes. Several firefighters have been injured.
Despite firefighters' best efforts, the so-called old fire destroyed this building and seriously damaged at least one house just hours after it began. Dry drought conditions combined with hot temperatures made for fast-burning fuel Saturday afternoon and created major problems for more than 400 firefighters. LA County Fire Deputy Chief John Tripp.
We had hundreds of spots, small fires, that just kept merging into a large fire. We had fires flaring up all around, in front of us, behind us, and on either side of us.
3,700 high-priced homes in Topanga Canyon and Calabasas were in the fire's direct path. Actor Phil Reeves, who stars in Veep, took this video. Last night, thousands were forced to evacuate.
It's like a scene out of a Hollywood movie. And eventually it jumped the road, got behind us, and to the left in front of us, and we had to get evacuated, and the whole area was up in flames within minutes.
Safe Track program. It is getting some attention from the district's Homeland Security Agency. As Metro embarks on a year's worth of repairs that will impact service, emergency officials tell Fox 5 an evacuation crisis could erupt if the city doesn't adjust its current plans to move people safely out of harm's way.
Well, to be clear, the city and the district feels that their plan is in place and is a good plan, but what they're concerned about is that people, all of us, are not paying attention to this very serious fact that Metro is under construction for the next year. Think about it. We've gone through a derecho. We've gone through an earthquake. We've even gone through 9/11, all with Metro trains running. But over the course of the next year, that might not always be the case with these service and interruptions that we're about to see. Now,
if you had to get out of D.C., if we had another earthquake, if we had another 9/11, what would you do? How would you get out? How would I get out? That's a good question.
Would you know how to get out of D.C.?
Probably not. Yeah, probably not.
Do you have an evacuation plan to get out of D.C.?
No, not really, to tell you the truth, and it is kind of concerning.
Well, it is also a concern of D.C.'s Homeland Security and Emergency Management Command Center. Since Safe Track's launch on Saturday, the center has been monitoring metro and area roads. The reason, if a natural disaster or a terrorist attack struck, evacuation routes would face a crush of vehicles as metro safety surges are underway. D.C. Homeland Security officials said today they could evacuate the district if an emergency struck. They are prepared to deploy more than 130 traffic control officers onto D.C. D.C. streets and use more than 10,000 security cameras to control traffic lights and move people out of the district. But many people do not know where these evacuation routes are. D.C. Homeland Security now is relaunching a free phone app showing you the evacuation routes, which actually navigates you to them. Director Christopher Gelhart says the message is this: we all need to dust off our evacuation plans, and understanding Metro is not a reliable option over the next year. Now, looking forward over the next couple of weeks, on July 4th, there will be another activation of the Fast Forward plan. That is going to be an effort to evacuate everyone off the National Mall following the fireworks demonstration. And then coming up in about 9 weeks, DC's Homeland Security and Emergency Management is going to be launching Ready DC. This is a complete reimagining of the emergency management and Homeland Security effort in this district. Their effort is to get everyone reattuned to all of this, coming just before the 15th anniversary of 9/11.
In Florida, 34 counties have declared a state of emergency as floodwaters as high as 2 feet breached some houses. Over 10,000 households were out of power. Meanwhile, 30 people were evacuated from an inundated mobile home park in Largo. Governor Rick Scott has ordered over 6,000 Florida National Guards to be on alert for any possible disasters. The storm is now moving north and is likely to affect Georgia, South and North Carolina.
You know, if you're headed to the beach, especially if you're headed to Florida at all, you want to watch out for this. This is really pretty disgusting looking. These are sea lice. They're popping up all over Gulf Coast beaches. They're microscopic, impossible to spot in the water, but they're actually jellyfish larvae. And while they're very, very tiny, they have the same stinging cells as a full-grown jellyfish. And as you can see here, they leave a mark. In fact, the rash they cause is called sunbather's eruption. Sometimes they even get caught beneath your bathing suit. Now, the rashes may include elevated skin with a reddish tint and some small blisters, but you can see what a severe reaction looks like. It can even cause fever, chills, nausea, and headaches. Now, we have confirmed it in at least 2 beaches in Florida, and biologists say they expect to start seeing more along the coastline towards areas with warmer climates, such as the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. But so far, none have been spotted along Texas beaches. We should warn you, though, they are most active from the months of April through August. Again, sea lice. You can't see them, but you can certainly feel them.
Three rival Christian groups have finally put aside their differences to begin a project to restore the tomb of Jesus in Jerusalem.
In the Christian tradition, the tomb is believed to be located inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and now it's going to be renovated for the first time in 200 years. The tomb itself is surrounded by an ornate chamber that includes candles and hanging lamps, but the chamber has become less stable over the years and is in desperate need of repair. The project started this Monday, and the current renovations are expected to take about a year, and pilgrims will still be able to visit the site while it's being renovated. But more than just the actual work that's being done to support the structure in the tomb, the project is incredible because it's brought together rival Christian groups who have frequently disagreed about who should possess the shrine. Different sections of the church are under the control of the Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Armenian groups, and they all share possession of the shrine at the tomb. The groups have frequently clashed in the past over rights to the church, but in the end, they all set aside their differences to work together and restore the tomb of Jesus.